Coming up this week on Sporting Journal Radio.
A walleye is a walleye is a walleye. Whether it's on Lake Erie or it's in a farm pond in Iowa or it's in a Canadian Shield Lake or it's in Lake Columbia. They all do the same thing.
It's simple. It's effective.
In the case of Red Lake, Upper Red Lake, with all those spawners, there's going to be competition for even spawning habitat.
I fish, I hunt, and always will. Broadcasting from the Prairie Sportsman Studios. Presented by OnX.
Know where you stand with OnX.
We're not just a radio show anymore.
Heck yeah.
This is Sporting Journal Radio.
Welcome to the show. Ali Shakoor is with us. He's got some really cool walleye research to tell us about. If you like to walleye fish, you got to listen to this interview. We'll get as much of it in on the radio show as we can. We'll probably have to go along with the podcast. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll get the whole thing, or downloading this, of course. Joe Henry is with us as well, too. We'll talk about the Rainy River and what Lake of the Woods might look like for the opener coming up in just a little bit. I'm Bret Amundson. That's Dan Amundson and David Eckhardt. How you fellas doing?
Doing good.
How you fellas doing?
Who are the sponsors this week, Dan?
This week we have OnX Hunt, OnX Maps, know where you stand with OnX. Live Target, match the hatch at livetargetlures.com. Lake of the Woods Tourism. Lake of the Woods is the walleye capital. Plan a trip for this summer at lakeofthewoodsmn.com. Haybale Heights Campground and Resort. Book a trip to Devil's Lake, North Dakota. Learn more at haybaleheights.com. Al Claire Audio. Save your hearing in the field with Al Claire. Learn more at alclaireoutdoors.com. Ottertail Lakes Country, ice-free Ottertail Lakes Country. Find your inner otter at ottertaillakescountry.com. And Prairie Sportsman, the new season wraps up this week, but you can find all of our episodes on YouTube at the Prairie Sportsman YouTube channel.
That's right. So we did film a turkey hunt this week that we're hoping will be on Prairie Sportsman next year. We'll see. We still got to get Dan to fill his tag and hopefully get some good footage on that. But I filled mine, and I think we were filming it fairly well. I think we had pretty good footage, Dan, until the turkey we were going after. So we spotted one from the road, David, a long ways off. We knew we had a long ways to walk. We were going to try to get close enough to him without getting busted, set up a decoy, try to call him in, film it. We had good cover to walk along this creek. And right before we got to the open field where we were going to kind of set up, all of a sudden we heard gobbles right next to us. And as we were kind of cutting up towards this field edge to like a T at the field edge, all of a sudden there was a turkey like coming down the field edge, I think. We heard it gobble and gobble and gobble, and all of a sudden it was past us and we could see it. So we quickly set up the decoy kind of in the woods, tried to call it in, wouldn't come. And this has been one of the biggest struggles of early turkey season this year, David.
It's not even early.
Well, yeah, well, you're right. I should say the early part of the turkey seasons. I guess, and this is what season? This is during season.
Yeah, it's
C?
not even early, but we're still dealing with it. It's just a late spring. Anyways,
Late
go
spring.
on.
A giant snowdrift is what we had to. we had to try to call him over this snowdrift to get to us because there was no way we could get to the other side of the drift without him spotting us. Wouldn't come. Just hung up.
Bring your shovel. You couldn't tunnel through.
Finally crawled up on the drift and stuck the decoy on the drift.
Perfect.
Hoping he would see that decoy and come barreling in. Didn't move. Didn't do anything. So I went up there, pulled the decoy back. We backed off and called from him further away, trying to bring him, get him to chase us.
Mind you, with the worst mouth call I've ever used in my life. So had that one.
Yeah, it was a bit of a struggle. So finally, we sat there and watched him for like a half hour spinning in circles. And I said, I think the only way we're going to get this done is if I grab the decoy and put a sneak on him, try to crawl up behind the decoy. And it was about 5 minutes after that decision that I realized just how out of shape I am.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of belly crawling.
No, I hate it for whatever. I don't like it. I like the easy way of just calling him in close. And
the easy way.
That's
so easy.
So I had to belly crawl across the snowdrift, like through two snowdrifts to get to him. So I'm crawling through snow, and then there's wet grass and mud and tree branches, and I'm pulling a full-size, it's like a strutting Jake decoy, and trying to stay behind this thing. And I know there's footage of it and some audio, and the audio is just me going.
It's straight out of Star Wars, Darth Vader.
But I'll tell you what, I got close enough, got the shot, got it done, and was able to punch my tag. So I'm pretty excited.
Congratulations.
Day two of my turkey season. That's the fastest I've filled a tag.
That's sad.
From the season. Anyway, we've been eating some delicious turkey. Got a tip from Corey Loeffler, fried in bacon grease. It's amazing. Delicious.
I love it.
We've got one of the legs and thigh meat is in the crock pot right now, doing some slow cooking. So we're going to eat that tonight. Pretty excited. So we did a little bit of research, and actually I found a pretty cool video that we're going to show you real quick here, and then we're going to do some turkey trivia. But Minnesota's turkeys, the last one they saw in the wild was 1880. It was the last one that they saw in the state. And then in the 1920s, they tried to reintroduce them. Didn't work. And finally in 1971, they were other states were starting to transplant birds and bring them in and having success. So in 71, I think we traded ruffed grouse to Missouri for some turkeys and then did it a few more times. And now we've got turkeys all over the state, which has been great. Our first season was in 1978. So we're coming up on 50 years, but this year, Vermont celebrated its 50th turkey season, and they went through a similar situation. And in the late 60s, they started transplanting birds. And I found the story. I was putting the story up. National Wildlife Turkey Federation emailed it out. I put it on the Outdoor Feed website, so you can read all about this. You can watch this full video at theoutdoorfeed.org. But here's what it looked like in the late 60s when they were transplanting birds to Vermont.
By the mid-1960s, it had become apparent to wildlife biologists that in order to successfully establish a wild turkey population, a different approach must be used.
They were trying to use pen birds, and it wasn't working.
Were developed to safely capture turkeys, which could then be transported to colonize unoccupied
Just filmed on a new cannon.
Yeah.
In 1969,
could you imagine trying to make a video with that equipment these days?
From the New York Conservation Department to trap 15 to 20 wild turkeys for release in the southwestern section of the state. Turkeys were leg banded to aid in future identification, and biologists recorded the animal's weight, sex, and age.
They must have some sedatives on those turkeys.
They were once again free and readily adapted to their
that
new
snowmobile.
home. The
there you go.
Technique still
there it
used
is.
today
So yeah, they're still
involves
using some
gradually
similar techniques. If they're, I don't think they're transplanting much for birds anymore.
Don't
but
need to.
They were, using that same technique for a number of years. Probably exactly what they did in Minnesota too. They only had to go to New York to transport those birds. So, check out more at theoutdoorfeed.org. All right, Joe Henry's coming up with some turkey trivia, and Ali Shakur with some really interesting walleye research on the way.
Devil's Lake is legendary, and this summer has been legendary for walleyes. Don't miss out. Call Haybale Heights Campground and Resort today to book one of their modern cabins on East Bay. The cabins are furnished with a full bathroom, kitchen, and all the amenities like high-speed internet, and are clean following CDC guidelines. Staying at Haybale Heights gives you full access to a private boat launch, fish cleaning station, and beach area. Learn more at haybaleheights.com. That's haybaleheights.com. Plan your trip to legendary Devil's Lake today.
852 million acres of public land, 147 million private properties.
All in the palm of your hand. The #1 hunting GPS app just got better. With hundreds of custom map layers, 3D and topographic maps, you can easily scout on the road or at home before you go. And now you can get important weather details, CWD detection, and even know what crops have been planted where. Get the most trusted hunting GPS app ever made. OnX. Know where you stand with OnX.
All right, now it is time to talk to Joe Henry from Lake of the Woods Tourism. And Joe, it's your lucky day because today we're starting off the interview with some turkey trivia. I know you're pretty excited about it. It has so much to do with your Lake of the Woods fishing report. We'll get to that in just 1 second, though. But Joe, how you doing?
I'm doing well, you guys. How are you?
We got Dan Amundson and David Eckhardt with us right now, and we are doing a little bit of turkey trivia here, ladies and gentlemen, to learn you a little bit more about what the turkeys are like here in the United States of America. Question number one. Are you guys ready for turkey trivia? Question number one. How many subspecies of wild turkeys are in North America? Is it A, 4? Is it B, 5? Is it C, 6? Or is it D, 12?
It's A.
You're saying 4?
Yep.
I'd have to say C, letter C. 6.
5. Let's throw it in the middle.
The answer is 5, ladies and gentlemen. 5.
Yes.
5 of them. Which of the following are not a subspecies of turkey in the United States? A, the Goulds. B, the Merriams. C, the Genios. Or D, the Osceola.
The Genio.
Well, there could be some controversy on this because
No, David.
Genio turkeys do exist in the United States.
They do exist.
So, hang on.
Big numbers.
Big
it's
giant
a trick
numbers.
question.
Yeah, what's the answer, host?
It was Genio.
Oh, come on.
Yeah. All right, question 3. What is the smallest of the subspecies? Is it A, the Easterns? Is it B, the Rio Grande? Is it C, the Ocellated? Or is it D, the Osceola?
D.
Yeah, I'm going to go D.
Sure.
D.
We'll go with it.
The answer is C, the Ocellated, but
What's the size difference?
I'm going to look it up right now. I got to look at. I got to pull this up for just a second and double check it because there are 5 subspecies according to National Wildlife Turkey Federation: the Easterns, the Osceola, the Rio Grande, the Merriams, and then the Goulds. So the Ocellated. There's a trick question.
I didn't hear that as one of the 5. I'm
No,
sorry.
so the Ocellated is actually only in Mexico. The Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico, northern Belize, and the El Patin region of northern Guatemala.
This game's rigged.
So technically, yeah, that
so
was.
D was correct then. The Osceola.
Yeah, I guess I got
This
that one wrong.
game's rigged.
I threw a
You know what my logic
curveball
was
in
is
there.
that down in Florida, the deer are smaller, and you know what I mean. Everything's smaller. So I
Yeah.
just figured it holds true for the turkeys as well.
Yeah, you're probably correct there. I'll double check it here. It is considered the toughest species to call in. They have very long spurs, strong gobbles, long legs. Let's see. Does it say how they are? They're shorter beard lengths than Easterns. Adult females weigh 8 to 12 pounds. Adult males weigh approximately 20 pounds, which is pretty close to an Eastern. 18 to 30 pounds, I guess, for Easterns. Rio Grandes are 20 pounds. Merriams are 18 to 30. So
Glad we did our good research before this show.
I wrote this question like a month ago, and we'd never used this trivia. So then I kind of forgot about it, and I pulled it out. Obviously, I didn't pay much attention
So
to it.
you had a whole month to prep for this.
Yeah, well, I prepped for like an hour
With an hour, because still couldn't figure it
a
out.
month ago.
That's
and,
like more than I ever did homework
When
in
you're
college.
When you're describing that turkey, I was kind of thinking that there's some tendencies to some of the good people that Danny went to school with at Bemidji State.
You're not wrong.
Well, in any case, there is
That's a
some
compliment, by the
information
way.
I agree.
about the turkeys of the U.S. and the ocellated that is south of the United States. There you go, turkey trivia. Joe, do you do much turkey hunting?
No, but I think I've seen some of those oscillated turkeys running around up here in Minnesota. I don't know how they got over the border, but I think I've seen them.
Well, there's so many of them flooding
You
in
want
right
to touch
now.
on that one, Brett, please?
They're probably pretty much a United States turkey now at this point.
Would you like to comment on that at all, Brett?
No,
How many-
we
how
should
they
probably
got here?
we'll leave that for a different show. It is. I do see some turkeys up in northern Minnesota. It's pretty amazing to see that the population kind of grow in northern Minnesota. We actually, when Dan and I were going up to driving through Canada last year, we saw one in Manitoba somewhere. I don't remember where we were, but we saw a turkey running around. So there are definitely turkeys up north, but people go to Lake of the Woods to do some fishing, and I saw some big sturgeon coming out of the Rainy here this week, Joe.
Well, there's been some big biggies caught this week, and you know what? Sturgeon fishing was better this week. I don't know exactly what it was, if the water got a little clear or what, but the water was, those fish will bite in dirty water, but it's just been so cold. Like, we haven't been warming up, and like we normally would gradually warm up, and so but this last week was a much better week for sturgeon fishing, and things are really starting to turn on, and this is our last week, I think, of the spring for the keep season, and then it's catch and release season again through May 15th. So it's still game on for sturgeon fishing, and they're catching a lot of fish in 4 Mile Bay, which, for those of you that don't know Lake of the Woods, that's at the very mouth of the Rainy River. There's a big boat ramp at Wheeler's Point, and it's really close to the boat access. But otherwise, they're catching fish up and down the river too. There's 42 miles of navigable Rainy River, and there's different holes throughout the river. And I would just say that some sturgeon anglers are targeting the actual holes of the river for the sturgeon, and then some others are targeting the flats area that kind of are adjacent to the holes, and those fish are sliding up on those flats and feeding also. So a lot of sturgeon to be had. I heard a stat recently that I think it's the DNR says that there's over 100,000 sturgeon over 40 inches in the Rainy River.
Wow.
It's a lot of sturgeon.
Now, when they say that there's 100,000 sturgeon over 40 in the Rainy, are they talking about fish that kind of primarily stay in the Rainy, or are they, you think, bouncing out and in and out of the lake? Is this a Lake of the Woods population of sturgeon, or what?
Well, I don't know for sure, honestly, but I think that the majority of the fish stick to the Rainy pretty good. There's always a strong population of fish in the Rainy River, and certainly they catch sturgeon out on Lake of the Woods as well, in different parts of Lake of the Woods. And, we've heard of just some absolute behemoth fish caught on the lake too. So I don't know how that works, if those fish are coming and going from the river, or if they actually resort to actually living in the lake then. That'd be an interesting question for the DNR biologist. I don't know that one.
Well, it's amazing fishery, and it's great to see it come back and have the success that it's had for sturgeon. David?
Well, and that tag sturgeon from the tournament, that was tagged in 4 Mile Bay and didn't get caught for 20 years, and then got caught in the river. So
it's amazing. And it's a cool story when you get a tagged fish like that, and you can hear the behind the scenes. There's some sturgeon that are caught numerous times. There's others that have never been caught before, and some people think that they maybe just slid over and maybe lived part of their life on the Canadian side where you can't fish them. Some people think some of them might have gone into the lake and they're just kind of spread out there, and who knows why. I mean, but there's a lot of river too, and people fish up to Birchdale, and then of course you can go past Birchdale, but now you got rapids and rock, and that's why most people don't venture past Birchdale. But who knows where those sturgeon go?
Yeah. Well, Joe, I did some driving around a couple hours north of here last week when I went up to that gun fair in Little Falls, and then we've talked to some other people around the region, and some lakes still have quite a bit of ice on them. I think it's going quickly. Some of those places. During my drive, every lake I drove by was wide open. What's the latest on ice conditions up at Lake of the Woods?
Yeah, it's I tell you what, Mother Nature, between the sun and the rain and the wind, is taking a beating on that ice. Ice is getting black. A lot of open spots are popping up, mainly up at the angle. The majority of Big Traverse Bay is still ice covered, but that ice is getting dark. And we kind of go through this every year, and I always get a kick out of it. People, you're gonna have ice for the opener, and 95% of the time we don't. And if we do, even if we do have some ice chunks floating around out there in Big Traverse Bay, man, I'll tell you what, right off the bat, the Rainy River is open right now into Lake of the Woods through the gap. And man, I'll tell you what, there's going to be a lot of walleyes left over in that river. There's going to be a lot of walleyes left in 4 Mile Bay. And of course, once you can get on that lake, a lot of those walleye fishing we do is going to be pretty close to shore as a rule. It's going to be, jig fishing.
So my dad is got an annual fishing trip that he takes with his buddies, and they've been doing it for, 40 years, 30 some years. Another big family tradition, or a friend tradition, fishing trip. And they're going to Lake of the Woods this year again. They went there last year too. Actually, after we brought, I think, my dad up and we stayed at Arneson's, and they booked at Arneson's for the next year, and then they're going to Arneson's again this year, and they're going to fish out of a launch this year, one of their charter boats. And I'm kind of jealous. I haven't been on one of those boats now. We've been bringing our own up there, which is always kind of fun, but it's nice to be able to jump in one of those boats and just sit back and let one of the guides do all the work up there, Joe.
Well, I'll tell you what. Well, here's the deal, too, is that there's a lot of people that maybe they're not real avid anglers. Maybe they don't have a boat. Maybe they do have a boat and just feel a little intimidating bringing their boat, and putting it on the big waters of Lake of the Woods, which I understand. But if that's the case, man, stepping aboard a charter boat is a nice way to go. You jump in the car. You don't have to bring a lot. You don't have to pull a boat. You go up to a nice resort, normally get up there late afternoon, have a couple of your favorite beverages, have a nice dinner with your group, and just have a nice relaxing night. You get up the next morning, have breakfast. You board the charter boat at about 7:45. At around 8 o'clock, you'll see the parade of charter boats either going out of the Rainy River, or maybe you're staying at a South Shore resort where you just shoot out of the harbor. And whichever way you do it, man, I'll tell you, licensed charter captain's going to take you out. The rod's reel, tackle, bait, and the expertise is all included. They're going to put you on fish. They're dialed in on the walleyes. If those walleyes have moved, if the wind has changed, something like that, they're working with other captains that are in real time on the water, and these captains are working together to put you on fish. And I'll tell you what, fishing on a charter boat is not only easy. I mean, it's simple, it's effective, and they even clean your fish for you when you come in at 5:00 in the afternoon. So it's a beautiful day. I know sometimes I know couples that go up there, a couple of buddies will go up together, and then they'll combine groups on a charter boat, which takes up to 6 customers typically.
Yeah, most of those boats are all pretty similar across the resorts, right? They can fit about 6 people in them.
Well, they can fit more, but the kicker with 6 is that's what our Coast Guard license allows us to take out. It's called an OUPV license, an owner of uninspected passenger vessel, up to a certain amount. That's called a 6-pack license, and that's what the vast majority of people have around here. So that's why it's a 6-person limit on those boats. It's because of our Coast Guard license, and that's plenty. It makes it fun. I kind of like jumping on with different people. I mean, I made some really good friendships over the years jumping on with. I met people from the Twin Cities, and during a sports show, they picked me up after the sports show, brought me to just a really neat pizza place in St. Paul. I'd never been to, kind of a hole-in-the-wall place. Actually, I'll tell you what it was, called Mama's Pizza in St. Paul. And so John and Sonia did that. But I met many good people on charter boats over the years, and it's a lot of fun. It's also a lot of fun just talking to people from different parts of the United States, finding out about their life, helping them fish if they're not real avid anglers, seeing the excitement when they catch a nice walleye. I mean, it's good. It's fun stuff. And it's relaxing, Brett. I mean, man, you step on board, all of a sudden, you don't have to figure out where the fish are. You don't have to figure out the weather. You don't have to figure out navigation. You just sit back and truly relax and enjoy the scenery and talk with your friends and family. And it's very nice.
And one of the, at least some of those boats that I've been on, if we had people that either were in the bar till pretty late the night before and needed a place to take a nap, which I've watched people do many, many times, they can sleep down below. And then if we had women on board, there was usually a little room that they could use a bathroom on some of those boats down underneath them as well too. So
exactly. The little bathroom on board, it really makes it nice and convenient, and it's just simple and it's comfortable. It's a big boat, so it can handle the big waves. The captains do a nice job of taking care of customers, and everything's provided. I mean, you don't have to bring a rod or anything. You just step aboard. Really, we joke around about the charters. You got to remember 2 things in a day: what should I wear and what should I eat. Other than that, go catch walleyes.
Yeah, it's a nice way to go. And if people want to learn more about charter boat fishing, what should they do, Joe?
Check out our website. Everything's on there, and that is lakeofthewoodsmn.com.
Before we let you go, though, I did want to mention. I know there's some changes going on with some of the resorts up there. I saw Wheeler's Point is renaming their bar, and they're closing out all their Wheeler's Point merch. So if anybody has stayed there, or if anybody wanted a little piece of Lake of the Woods history, maybe, Joe, they can get a Wheeler's Point hoodie or hat. They're doing them for like 50% off while they last. So.
Well, Wheeler's Point has a very storied tradition for many, many people. Many really great resort owners have come through. They're wonderful, wonderful people, and worked hard, built a great name up. And it just so happens that this was part of Wheeler's Point Resort. It's one of the resorts in the sale, and when the resorts were purchased, and they're going to rename it, and they're going to rename it to, I think, Borderview North, right? And then what they're going to do is they're going to rename their bar, and they're actually having a contest online where if you go to the Wheeler's Point Resort Facebook page, you have an opportunity in the comments section to put down there what you think the name of the new bar should be. And if they pick your name, I think you get $100 in a gift card or something from Borderview Lodge. So kind of a neat deal. And but again, that bar, if you've ever been to that bar, what a neat bar. I mean, you're overlooking the Rainy River towards Canada. You're right on the point. It's got a really neat feel inside of it. It's got these fans that have a cable system that turn these fans real slow. You just have to see it, and it's just a neat atmosphere. And again, it's one of the cool things about Lake of the Woods, you guys. Every resort's a little bit different. It has its own menu. It has its own ambiance, its own culture. And certainly Wheeler's Point, now Borderview North, is one of those resorts, just like many others are. I mean, they all have something to offer, and certainly this one does as well.
Well, we're excited to get up. I know, Dan, you're going to try to go up there next week, it sounds like.
Excuse me. Right after opener, I'm going to zip up there for a day. We're going to be doing a little Minnesota Walleye opener tour and hitting a few different lakes, and you can't do that without going to Lake of the Woods. So we're going to sneak up there for a day and see what we can find.
I'm jealous.
Yeah, you should be.
I'll be over at Horicon Marsh at the same time as you, not fishing. Maybe a little fishing over there. I'll be over there with Pat Colmerton, so we might try to fish a little bit. But when my dad goes up in June, Joe, Dan and I are going to come up and join him too and fish with the guys up there.
Can't wait.
Yeah, pretty excited.
You're going to guide him, hey?
Well, we're going to support him, we'll say.
That a boy.
So.
I wouldn't say that in front of your dad, I guess. I hope he's not listening. No, I'm sure he loves having his son and grandson with anyway. It would just, you guys are always a good time.
Yeah, he was pretty excited about it when we told him. But all right, Joe, Ali Shakoor is actually going to be joining us. If you want to stick around, he's going to be joining us next on the show. Otherwise, Joe Henry, thanks for the time today on the show.
All right, say hi to Ali. He's an awesome dude. You're going to enjoy listening to him. Thank you.
Northern Minnesota's Walleye Factory is a year-round world-class fishing destination. The perfect getaway this summer is just a short drive to Lake of the Woods. Fish Big Traverse Bay, the Rainy River, or visit the unique Northwest Angle. To catch big fish, you have to go where the big fish are. Plan your trip to Lake of the Woods at lakeofthewoodsmn.com. That's lakeofthewoodsmn.com. Live Target, the leader in Match the Hatch, is back with new lures that also match the action. Introducing the Live Craw. The Live Craw is irresistible to bass, walleye, and other freshwater species. FTech's winner, the Ultimate Frog, looks and acts just like a swimming frog. With an exposed Ultra Point mustad hook and replaceable legs, the Ultimate Frog has 2 styles, 2 sizes, and 8 colors. And iCast and FTech's winner, the Live Shrimp, mimics a fleeing shrimp for saltwater anglers. Coming soon from Live Target. This is Sporting Journal Radio. I'm Bret Amundson. Thanks for tuning in on the network, by demand, sportingjournalradio.com, or by watching this on YouTube. Dan Amundson and David Eckhardt are with us as well here. How you guys doing?
Doing good.
Great.
All righty.
Yeah.
Last year in Branson, when we were there in September, Dan,
Yep.
we got to interview a bunch of people for the show and meet a bunch of people. We were there for the Aglow conference, and we met somebody there that I mean, we had some good interviews. I don't want to knock the interviews that we did with anybody else that were there, but nobody else gave us walleye research, which was some of the most interesting stuff that I think that we got while we were down there, and that was with Ali Shakur, who joins us once again on the show. Ali, how you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me. Always appreciative of the opportunity to come on and do a little talking about some fishing.
So you come from an interesting background because you're a biologist, yet you're also a tournament angler. So I probably could come up with questions for you every week because I feel like that's I feel like you'd have an edge over some of the other anglers in the tournament because you can think like a fish a little bit and understand what they're doing down there. Has that helped you out in the tournaments, you think?
No, man, these guys. I wish it would give me a leg up, but the guys that I fish against on a couple different circuits, if you mess up, make the wrong decision, drop the wrong fish or something, you're in trouble. They're absolute hammers. But it's giving me some shortcuts. I think when I'm pre-fishing and trying to figure out some things or going to a new body of water, I have won and placed really high on a couple of terms. I think based off of some knowledge that maybe I gleaned from some literature reviews or some of the stuff that I've seen raising walleye. So, it kind of adds another dimension to my preparation.
Last time we talked, you were doing some research, I think, on algae blooms or blue-green algae. Has there been any more research come out about that, or do you know any more?
Yeah, I'm still kind of repeating, doing some replicates. So for those who didn't hear, I'm taking walleye eggs that I'm getting from Beta Knock and exposing them to microcystis, which is one of the main mat-forming species of blue-green algae in Lake Erie. Taking a look at things like egg survival, hatch success, lipid content of larval walleyes, kind of a proxy for body condition, daily growth rate. So I'm exposing them to environmentally relevant levels of microcystis, and they are toxin producing, and a couple of other algae. And we're seeing some effects on survival and hatch success. So there's some interesting interactions going on. Now beyond that, I've actually started doing some other stuff on Erie in the same vein, which is we're using hydroacoustics. So I have this large, about a 5 or 6 foot airplane type vessel, and it has 4 large transducers on it, just like you're using to catch fish. 400, 200, 110, and 70 kilohertz. And we're mapping subsurface concentrations of microcystis and also mapping fish community distributions, both inside and outside of the bloom. Then we're also doing some stuff like sampling zooplankton, prey fish, and then putting acoustic telemetry, that is the tracking data from fish, to get a snapshot of how fish are utilizing that bloom because of some of those toxins that are produced and because of some of the possible environmental impacts. So the research is kind of expanded a little bit, and I'm really excited in the direction that we're heading.
So are you finding that, I mean, do these walleyes just kind of bounce in and out of it? Is it just from them going from point A to point B? Are they following it? Is there something in them that they're feeding on, or what's their relationship to these blooms?
Well, a lot of so the bloom sets up basically in July or so in the far western basin, Maumee Bay, basically. And at that point, the majority of the larger trophy-sized walleye have migrated towards the eastern basin. They're following some cooler water and doing what they do every year. But there are some other species that still hang around. There's a lot of walleye still, just the majority of the larger fish are gone. So they will transit right through it. There's some unpublished DNR data from out of Ohio showing that some of the larger walleye were actually using the edge of the bloom as cover, right? People think that there's no cover on the Great Lakes and it's featureless. So they were using the edges. That could be a thing where they're following bait fish that are using the edge. We're not really sure. Hopefully some of this data that I'm putting together will show that. But they will use the bloom for different purposes at different times of the year.
So is that water pretty clear? Would they use that also because for walleyes being sensitive to light, it'd be a little bit darker there, or is it more cover for ambush locations?
It'd be a little bit of both, I would imagine. In low light situations, because of the way walleye vision works, they have the upper hand on prey species. So with water that's super turbid or there's high turbidity, it's really dirty. They'll have that, but also it's going to give them some cover from sunlight. But again, they could be drawn to that edge because the bait fish are using it, or zooplankton are drawn to it, and the bait fish are coming in to feed on zooplankton and then the walleye. So, there's never nothing happens in a vacuum where one species decides to do something. You have this, what they call a trophic cascade, where, everything that happens is influenced by something in the food web, either above or below, and sometimes both at the same time. So lots of really interesting interactions that are going on out there.
What was that picture that you just pulled up there, Dan? Can you explain what we're looking at in this? Do you still have it, or did you get rid of it? This picture.
Yeah, so this is a picture. This isn't like actually how shows how extensive it can get, but what you're seeing here up on Lake St. Clair in the upper left-hand side, that's a lot of mud kind of coming down, chalky water. We probably had a big blow. The Detroit River is pumping that same water into the far western basin to the left on that picture. All of that green that you're seeing is a harmful algal bloom or an algal bloom.
Wow.
Mainly consisting of microcystis. So it's going to stretch from the far western basin, Monroe, Michigan, out past Cleveland. This looks like it's going all the way out to Geneva or Ashtabula near the Pennsylvania line. So we're talking about hundreds of miles of lake that is covered by that bloom. It has impacts on drinking water. At one point, southeastern lower Michigan, northwestern Ohio, about 500,000 people lost their drinking water for about a week due to this bloom. It's affecting property values because it's washing up on shorelines and different things. And so, then there's the ecological issue. So it's really a multi-pronged problem that, a lot of people are really starting to take a look at. But it's an extensive problem, and it stretches for a good part of the lake. There's also some things that come from that. So when that bloom sets up in the western basin, at this latitude, we have primarily westerly winds. So it blows to the central basin and then it dies. And when it sinks to the bottom, it starts to decompose, right? And so decomposition consumes oxygen. So what happens is you have these areas that set up, they're called dead zones. So fish that may have lived on the bottom that are really sensitive to oxygen are starting to move, and it kind of creates a squeeze. There's a loss of habitat. Some fish are not as sensitive, like round gobies. They can survive in just about any conditions out there. But it can cause issues. Yellow perch have been kind of on the ropes. A lot of people are finding that yellow perch are actually starting to suspend, where they may have been demersal in the past and living on the bottom. They're kind of feeding higher in the water column. So again, I talked about this trophic cascade and these different trophic interactions, it just doesn't happen with the actual organisms, but it happens with other factors such as harmful algal blooms also.
What's causing that out there? What's causing that blue-green algae?
The research, the literature, Gary Fonenstiel has some really good work on this early on, talks about springtime rain in the far western basin through the Maumee River watershed. The Maumee River has the largest sediment load of any Great Lakes tributary, and it comes to a lot of agricultural
Ag runoff
and
then.
So you have a lot of fertilizer, phosphorus and nitrogen. Then you have some stuff later in the season or even early on where you have some municipal runoff. A lot of areas have combined sewage storm water overflows. So when heavy rainfall events, they'll start to release sewage, sometimes raw sewage, into the Detroit River and Sandusky, and that is just fuel for the fire. And that will fuel these blooms also. So there's a couple, there's a couple of different things that can impact the occurrence and severity of these harmful algal blooms.
We deal with that a lot in Minnesota. I think a lot of our lakes have it. I don't know of any. I've never heard of anything that big before, that extensive of a bloom, but we obviously deal with it here, and having dogs that like to swim when it gets real hot in the middle of summer like that, my dogs, I usually do everything I can to keep them out of there because it can be very toxic to dogs. So being in Minnesota with the amount of walleye anglers here, if your research ends up telling us that walleyes are suffering some sort of ailment from these toxic algal blooms, there's going to be something's going to get done about that around here, I think.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that they're suffering any ailments because of it. I don't want to throw out a false alarm at all. It's just something that needs to be it's an unknown. We've taken a look at some fish to see if microcystin, the toxin, is making it into the flesh. So a lot of times it's filtered out by the kidney or the liver. So we hadn't found anything where it's actually making it into the flesh. There was some studies on Grand Lake St. Mary's, which is just outside the Lake Erie watershed, where it was making it into the flesh of crappies. Now, that's not to say that that's happening in Minnesota for everybody to stop eating crappies. But on that same lake, you mentioned dogs. One of the years they had a really bad bloom. There were some people who lost family pets who were allowed to swim in that water that was really thick with cyanobacteria. So there are some concerns with pets, immunocompromised people. People with kidney issues, it can be impactful. So these are just kind of things to think of and be mindful moving forward with this type of thing.
Well, speaking of the cyanobacteria, we actually have some research about that coming up on the new Prairie Sportsman episode that's airing this Sunday on Pioneer PBS, Sunday night at 7:30, or you can watch it on the Prairie Sportsman YouTube channel starting at noon on Sunday. We also have some National Archery in the Schools program news from one of the schools in Minnesota has just been dominating at nationals, and we'll tell you who that is and do a story on them. And we've got some other foraging for milkweed. Have you guys ever eaten milkweed before?
Nope.
No.
Ali, have you ever foraged for milkweed before?
I've foraged for a lot of things, but never milkweed.
Yeah, I didn't really. I mean, I guess I'd heard of it. Apparently, it can be toxic unless you prepare it the right way. So that immediately is going to make me go, I'll go for the asparagus.
Yeah.
But Nicole Zempel, who you've spent some time with, David, more foraging for mushrooms, she has got a fast forage segment on milkweed coming up on the new Prairie Sportsman episode on Sunday. It's the last one of the season, actually. So, all right, Ali Shakur is our guest. We got to take a quick break, but we'll come back with more walleye research right here.
Did you know there are more than 1,000 lakes in Otter Tail County?
Yep, and I'm going to fish as many as I can. I'm an outdoorsy otter. Nothing beats a full day of fishing for me. The lakes of Otter Tail County give me plenty of options to lower my boat and snag the perfect catch. Not an outdoorsy otter? No problem. Otter Tail County has something for everyone. You just need to find your inner otter.
To find your inner otter, go to OttertailLakesCountry.com.
We're back. This is Sporting Journal Radio. I'm Bret Amundson. Thanks for tuning in. Wherever you're getting this show, thank you. Maybe you're watching this on YouTube along with Dan Amundson and David Eckhardt. And our guest right now, Ali Shakur, biologist and tournament angler. Are you in Michigan, Ali, or where are you at?
I am in Michigan. I'm just outside Detroit. I'm about 15 minutes from Detroit River. The walleye run's going on, so lots of good fishing going on up here right now.
Now, obviously, you have good fishing there, but you know about Minnesota. You probably know about some of our walleye lakes here. And I wanted to pick your brain about one thing in particular. And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago on the show. And Red Lake this year is one of our big walleye lakes here in Minnesota. They're actually allowing you to keep more fish. They raised it to what, 5 fish now?
Yep.
5 from 4.
And it's 5 with 1/20. There it is. You can read about it on sportingjournalradio.com. Last year it was 4. This year it's 5 with 1/20. And they say it's because of the 2019 class is super abundant, they said. And a lot of those fish are now 15 inches. They're going to start spawning. And they say that too many spawning walleyes in the system is not necessarily a good thing on Red Lake. And immediately my brain is like, it sure seems like it'd be a good problem to have. Once you start talking about forage and the carrying capacity of the lake and things like that, you can have it's what you were talking about in the last segment, the trophic cascade. Things get out of whack a little bit, and then you end up having issues. Walleyes don't get as big. There's not as much food. They start cannibalizing. So is that something? I mean, have you heard about the Red Lake deal, or is that something you've seen in other places?
I have heard about Red Lake. We've seen it here. On Saginaw Bay, we used to go up there and ice fish, and you'd have to go through literally 100 fish to catch 5 or 6 keepers through the ice. So what Michigan DNR was, they dropped the limit from 15 inches to 13 inches and dropped and raised the limit from 5 fish per angler to 8 fish per angler in hopes of taking some of those fish out of the system to release some of that pressure, allow those fish to get bigger and everything. So it worked a lot sooner than they thought it would. I think it's something else. I think the fish just kind of showed back up, but the fishing has really improved up there. So there is, I think it's a good train of thought to think along those lines. What happens is classic density dependence, right? The more individuals you have of the same species in an enclosed area, there's going to be more competition for mates, for food resources. In the case of Upper Red Lake, with all those spawners, there's going to be competition for even spawning habitat. And there's things in the literature that do show that if you have too many spawners in a system or in a confined area, that production will go down. And again, that's classic density dependence that happens with people, right? Except we're able to fight wars over things that we may not be able to get locally, but fish can't do that, or deer can't do that. So they respond. It's a biological response. There's going to be more disease. There's going to be less production. There's going to be less survival of offspring. So I think it's a viable strategy to keep that population going. There's also a thing with harvest. There's numbers you want to hit. You can take a lot of fish out of a system. So anytime you're talking about population growth and harvest, whether it's trees, whether it's fish or something else, there's a thing called MSY, that's maximum sustainable yield. And when that's graphed out and you look at it, there's a point where you can harvest all the way down to that point, and that population is still viable. And that's actually half the population size. And every DNR office that I've talked to or I've been to, and it's done intentionally, are always on the conservative side. They never come close to MSY, but that is to kind of keep the population where it's constantly growing. So again, it's a very viable strategy to help with the population on Upper Red Lake.
Well, it's good to see that population growing, and there's one lake in your backyard that just every time I think about how many walleyes and how many big walleyes are in it, it just boggles my mind. And granted, it's a great lake, but Erie is just insane walleye fishery out there. I know some guys from here just went out and took another trip, and the amount of big walleyes that people keep out of that, like it's like a knife twisting every time you see a 10-pound walleye get filleted, and it's like, what are you guys doing? Like, it's amazing that lake can sustain that.
Yeah, we get that a lot. Personally, I don't mess with big fish anymore. I made a decision. It's not scientifically based or anything. Is that I try not to keep, especially on the river, I try not to keep anything over 22 inches. Because of the fishery here, that can get incredibly tough. I have a charter captain buddy that I fish with, and we'll be out all day trying to catch 6 fish under 22 inches. A lot of fish, 7, 8, 9, 10 pounds get eaten around here. Those are actually eaters at certain times of the year, at certain years. So yeah, it's an incredible fishery. A lot of fishermen from other places will kind of give fishermen from here grief when they see these posts on Facebook about all the big fish are being taken. And my suggestion is, come to Lake Erie and fish. Just come see for yourself, and you'll understand that. I've had days literally where we'd have 4 men out. We'd have a 4-man limit, and small fish is 7 pounds. It can be. I've had multiple 12-pound. I had one day in March, maybe 5-6 years back. I had a couple 13s in the same day, and then a 12, and like a 60-pound bag of fish for my top 5. And so the big fish here at times are just it's absolutely insane.
It's an interesting fishery, and we obviously have Lake Superior here, which I fished a little bit, not a lot, but Great Lakes fishing can be a little bit different. There's some similarities, of course, but when you put that picture back up, Dan, or maybe that other picture that we saw from over there, how often does it look like this when you're out there?
This time of year, the boat traffic, the fishermen, that's pretty light right there. Wow. It gets quite a bit more boat traffic than this. Every weekend it's like this, a nice day throughout the week. I was just down doing some sampling in the city of Detroit on the water today at one of the parks, and it's 30 knot winds and raining, and there were boats out there fishing still. So it's pretty much an everyday occurrence almost.
And how often do the freighters come through?
Yeah.
It's constant freighter traffic. I see chicken being played out there every fishing trip.
Oh boy.
Which I don't get. There can be a fine, if you can impede their progress. I think it's like $600 or maybe a little bit more now. But funny story. I had a buddy who was down there fishing the river, jigging the Detroit River, and a big 1,000-footer probably freighter, 700 at least, was coming through, and he waited. He was on a good bite. He waited and he waited, and finally he decided to start up his main to get out of the way, and the main would not fire. And he did not have a kicker, and his trolling motor was not strong enough to move him out of the way. So with the freighter bearing down on him, pushing that wall of water that I'd imagine looked like it was 20 feet tall, he and his fishing buddy actually had to dive out of the boat into the Detroit River.
What?
To avoid being run down by that freighter. I mean, you think of something that big, they're not stopping. It's impossible. So, luckily they made it out. There's a lot of current. There's a lot of undertows. It can be extremely dangerous. But yeah, I see some pretty sketchy things out there with people trying to catch fish with those freighters coming in. But it can be it can be pretty interesting to see.
Mike.
So what's the difference? So we deal with a lot of barge traffic here, and barges can move a lot of water, and people always talk about watch out for the barge water. I've never fished the Great Lakes. What's the difference between like a barge wake and a freighter wake, like a Great Lakes ship wake?
Yeah, the barge. So I do Mississippi River and Illinois River, and those barges will move. The wakes are a lot bigger coming off those freighters, and they're a little bit sneakier. You can see them coming off of a barge. If you're running opposite direction of a freighter is coming toward upriver and you're going downriver, surprisingly, it's hard to see him. I remember being in the boat with Max Wilson. He had just gotten his boat, had a 400-horse Verado, and we were running downriver, and we didn't see the wave, and we went airborne, and I don't mean barely. I mean, we caught serious. I mean, Tony Hawk would have been proud of that jump. My back still hurt because I'm still 2 inches shorter after that landing. But yeah, those waves can be a little bit more treacherous than just the barge traffic, especially when you have two freighters going in opposite direction. There's a spot that I love to jig muskie. I jig muskie down there, and the Coast Guard will actually come up when two freighters are going opposite direction because it's a narrow part of the river, and when that happens, it turns into a giant washing machine.
Oof. Dang. What are you jigging for muskies with over there?
So I'm using Bondi baits. John Bondi out of Ontario makes them. They're 7 ounces, a big kind of flutter bait with a number 6 blade on the back.
Popular for lake trout bait. Yeah.
But very similar. Some of the big 10-inch Titan tubes I'll use. Fuzzy does it, some other stuff. But there's a fantastic vertical jig and bite. I get multiple fish up over 50 inches out there every year. Vertical
jigging for them.
So, wow. So it's, again, we talk about it being the walleye capital of the world, but Lake St. Clair and the Detroit
Oh,
River.
don't say that around Joe Henry.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to arm wrestle over that one. The smallmouth fishing, it's really, if you're thinking about coming to Detroit or Detroit River, Lake St. Clair, Lake Erie, you don't have to just be caught up on the walleye fishing. It's a fantastic there you go, giant smallmouth I got on Lake Erie about a week and a half ago. We caught multiples over 6 pounds. The pan fishing is incredible. We get bluegill over a pound on Lake St. Clair, big perch. It's heaven. It's like a sportsman's dream, and I know Minnesota is as well. I'm a big fan of Minnesota. I love it up there. It's God's country. But that's the thing about it. People always ask me which place is better, and it's a hard comparison because they're all just so fantastic and they're so beautiful to go to. It's just, what do you like? They're all just the best to me. I love them all.
Our guest is Ali Shakur. For our radio listeners, we got to let you go. Thank you for tuning in. But for the podcast listeners, we have more with Ali right now. So when we were talking about Red Lake a couple of weeks ago, Upper Red, and the changes that are going on there, I was doing some research, and I learned a little bit about what was going on over in Lake Huron and also on Erie about the spawn, where these walleyes go to spawn, and where they travel. And I think it was on Huron, those walleyes will travel a 500-mile round trip. From where they spawn to where they feed. It's 250 miles north and back. Is that right?
Yes, it's not just Lake Huron. It happens everywhere. I'm on the Detroit River I mentioned earlier, and the fish here, and this is the interesting thing. I'm going to get kind of off track just for a second. I want to talk about how you can affect a fishery and not really be aware that you're affecting it. So here on the Detroit River, we have Lake Erie fish that come here to spawn. We have Lake St. Clair fish that come here to spawn. We have fish from Saginaw Bay. We probably have fish from Sault Ste. Marie or from Georgian Bay or North Channel.
Wow.
So these fish make these longs. And the same thing, Saginaw Bay is going to have Lake Erie fish and Sault Ste. Marie fish. So there's this, I call it a mishmash of fish that may live in one place and spawn in another. So you could, Erie's different because you're not really, recreational fishing is not really going to hurt the population that much, but other places it could. You could go somewhere and catch a bunch of fish, and those fish not be resident to the body of water that you caught them on. They could have, made a long migration from somewhere else. And that's something that's going to be elucidated or come to light a little bit more with all the acoustic telemetry data that's going on. But yeah, these fish, I have some of the data, messed around a little bit. There's some walleye. There was one walleye that I saw an animation for that spawned in the Detroit River. And 7 days later it was in Erie, Pennsylvania, which is a couple hundred miles away.
Jeez. Wow.
So they do make these long-range spawning runs to get to their spawning grounds and back to their summer haunts and everything. So, yep, they do make them. They make them. It's pretty incredible. And it's kind of interesting to see. And if I can, I'll keep going.
Yeah, go for it.
Those types of spawning movements are applicable to you even if you don't live on the Great Lakes, right? I say it all the time when I do a seminar. A walleye is a walleye is a walleye. Whether it's on Lake Erie or it's in a farm pond in Iowa or it's in a Canadian Shield Lake or it's in Lake Columbia. They all do the same thing. The only thing that really changes is sometimes timing, but magnitude changes. So, one of the times that walleye are really vulnerable to being caught is during the spawn, right? They're going to go sometimes unpredictable routes to get to their spawning grounds. They're all going to congregate on a reef or on a shoreline or on a river, and then they're going to leave on very similar routes that they came in. So you can kind of figure this out over time and kind of head them off at the pass, right? They may make a 200-mile spawning run here or 300-mile spawning run. On your lake back home, it may be 2 miles. It may be 100 yards. But the movements are still there. And another thing I say all the time is that the only thing that changes is scale and magnitude. So I'll go and I'll give I'll talk about Erie or I'll talk about another body of water, and guys will say, well, that's different. And I'll say it's exactly the same. You're not thinking about it the right way. It's the exact same movement. It's the exact same interactions, food web interactions. The only thing that changes is scale and magnitude. So when you see those and you read those studies, it is immediately applicable to wherever it is that you fish. If the species are the same, and water temperatures could vary a little bit, but Another thing, not to always say what I like to say, but principles over particulars, right? You can talk about what baits to pull and how, whatever the case may be, you need to get to the root of why the fish do what they do. And that's something that I've really tried to do with the science background. Why was that walleye right there, right then? Then it becomes repeatable, not just to that body of water, but it becomes repeatable and applicable to other bodies of water as well.
So one difference that I will ask, and this is from an angler's perspective, that walleye is reacting the same whether it's in Erie or Red Lake or whatever. But if you're in a small body of water, you can manage that fish a lot easier in that water. But when you're talking about the Great Lakes system and a Detroit River, which is connected to so many other bodies of water, how do you manage for that walleye population when you've got so many coming from so many different areas congregating and then going back out? How is that done over there?
Lots and lots of math. Basically, it's very, very quantitative. But these guys have a great understanding of population dynamics and fishery science and what goes into this. They use some pretty powerful statistical methods to help figure this stuff out. But then we also have these long-term data sets, right? I have, 30 years worth of trawl data on my laptop that I'm on right now, where I can go in and look at all the prey fish species and walleye hatches and everything. And so you can, over time, get a real good handle on what these numbers mean and what it means for population growth or population decline. You're never going to know exactly, and that's why earlier I spoke on yield, maximum sustainable yield, and harvest levels and everything. That's why DNRs and people who set these types of limits are extremely conservative when they set those limits, because you don't want to take it to the end, to the edge of the envelope, right? Because if you're wrong, now you're in deep trouble with the population and the fishery, and at that point with the public. So they're extremely conservative with those numbers, so they never get close to being on the edge, and that allows for the population to continue to grow and provide a fantastic resource for the people who want to get out and fish.
So here in Minnesota, we deal with bodies of water that are borders have shared borders. So we'll deal with Wisconsin on the Mississippi. You'll deal with South Dakota on Big Stone and some other bodies of water, and then of course have to deal with Canada with the Rainy River and Lake of the Woods, where you're at. I mean, you're talking about multiple states and probably multiple. Or probably at least just Ontario up there, I suppose.
Yeah, so Lake Erie is going to be Ontario, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York.
Jeez,
how well do they play together?
Extremely well. So there's the Lake Erie Task Force, where there's a representative from each state, their DNRs, and this is where they get together. They take a look at the trawl data that's been collected. They make the decisions. They set what's called a TAC, total allowable catch. So Michigan gets a percentage of the catch. Ohio makes up the most of the shoreline, so they get a larger percentage of the catch, and then so on and so forth down the line. And they've worked out a formula where whatever that TAC is, and that information is freely available to the public. It's nothing that's held close to the vest. You can Google it. I think it's up on the screen now. You can take a look at it. So they have a formula that says if the total allowable catch is this, then the daily limit is 6 fish per person. If it's this, then it's 8 fish per person. So it's pretty set in stone. They've had a great handle on the population. What they do here, they do a fantastic job, and they play. It's tough to think of anywhere else where the interaction between the different states and provinces is as good as it is in this area. I could just be biased because I'm around it all the time, and I know some of the people who sit on those committees, but they do a great job of working together to manage the resource.
How much do you follow then what goes on over here? And is there anything you've seen that's been done here and not there, or vice versa, that you think could have been done or maybe could work in one of the other places?
I follow as much as I can. Even though I'm pretty busy, I just, I love fishing. I love fisheries. I love the science. And I love to see what's going on in other places and what works and may not work. I'm not going to say that I've seen things that may not work because, again, I'm looking from afar. Here I have numbers I can look at, and I don't have that in other places, and I'm never going to undercut someone
Sure.
who has dedicated their life to managing to resource, because it's not an easy job to do, because you got to deal with the science side, and then there's the public relations side that goes into that,
which may be harder.
Yeah,
especially
exactly.
here.
In my research, I try to stay away from people. I'd rather walk into a room full of fish. And
yeah,
it's too many dynamics dealing with people. Fish, if I feed them and give them the right water temperature, I have a party in the room every day. But I'm intrigued by the use of slot limits in other places.
Yeah.
There are no slots anywhere around here in the state of Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, I'm pretty sure, when it comes to walleye. And it's very popular in Minnesota, the Dakotas. You see, 1/28, or, you got to throw back fish between 20 and 28. And there's been some discussions between people that, it may not work. Maybe it's a people thing, a sociological type thing, and they want to see something being done. Because you start to get into the biology, they say we're targeting, or we're trying to protect the spawners, and that can be debatable depending on the body of water. But I'm always intrigued by the use of slot limits in other places, and the fact that it has not been used here, even when the population was low in the late 90s. There was a time in the Michigan waters, Lake Erie, where they actually shut down walleye fishing. You had to run over the border to Ohio to keep walleye early in the year. That was 98, 99 or so. So there's been times where the walleye population has been low, and maybe a slot, if they are as advertised, may have worked, but it was never used here. So again, that's not to say that people are wrong for using them. Just always interested in the dichotomy between the two.
There's one on Lake of the Woods, and I've been saying for a few years that I think that's what's given Lake of the Woods such an abundance of trophy fish. I mean, either they were already there and people just weren't catching them, but when you talk to the resort owners, and there's a lot of them up at Lake of the Woods, back in the 80s, if somebody caught a 6 or 7 pound walleye, they were bringing it back to the dock. They were slapping it up. They were taking pictures of it, high-fiving. It was a huge deal. And, a lot of times now when these guides, these charter boats are out with 6 guys on them, half the time they're not even taking pictures of 6-pounders anymore because they're catching so many of them. So that slot is 19.5 to 28.
Yeah, I think so. And I was actually just going to mention, I watched the Prairie Sportsman episode when we were fishing at Arneson's. We referenced it earlier in the show, I think. And you brought up the stat. I can't remember it exactly because you and I aren't the greatest at remembering stats like that. But before that, before that slot limit was in place, I think the average size of a walleye on Lake of the Woods was like 18, 19 inches, like, and now it was up into the 20s, 24, 26 or something. Maybe not average, but it was something like that. Like the size of the walleyes increased drastically once that slot was put in place. And now we talk to guys at Lake of the Woods. They're like, it was an okay day of fishing. We only got like 2 28s and a 27.5. And it's like, oh yeah, terrible day of fishing. So it's definitely, from our perspective, has been a benefit. And it's interesting. I didn't know that there have been that's kind of a unique thing to maybe our area. I didn't know that. So that's interesting to know about.
It's not really unique to the area. So again, I think it's just a tool that really hasn't been used here. But again, we're talking about Great Lakes fisheries versus, even though those lakes are extremely large, they don't cover the area that Lake Erie and some of the other lakes, the Great Lakes cover. Also, you're talking about up that way, those are colder, more oligotrophic or nutrient poor lakes. Whereas Lake Erie, Lake St. Clair, Saginaw Bay are pretty nutrient rich. So
they're growing faster.
Yeah, it's in Lake Erie, it's 2 years to 15 inches.
Wow.
So I had fish that I had in the tanks that I was doing some stuff with. They were hatched in the spring, and by September, October, they're 6 to 9 inches already. Wow. 6 to 10, somewhere up to 10 inches already in the first 6-8 months, 6-7 months. So yeah, they're extremely fast growth rates. But with those, it does stuff. It shifts, age at maturity. It shifts when they spawn, when those things happen. And they are protecting a good swath of spawning, which kind of goes into something else with keeping big fish. We talked about the big fish that are being kept here, and we'll throw this out there also, talking about that. again, people get grief for keeping those big fish. They say, "Oh, let them go, let them grow. They'll pass on their genetics." First of all, walleye fishing isn't QDM, right? It's not selective, oh man, we're gonna take that one out of the herd because his right side is messed. His G2 is all out of whack. It doesn't work that way. That way, there's some studies that show that larger fish will have larger eggs or eggs with more lipid or fats, and it can improve survival. But there's not really a big fish gene. So when you keep those larger fish, that fish is 12, 15 years old. She's got a couple of years left to contribute to the gene pool. That 18-inch fish that's 3 years old, she's got 12, 15 more years to spawn. So which is the better fish to keep? The 30-incher, who's big, who you want to pass on those genes, or the 3-year-old that's got 12 to 15 more years of spawning to contribute to the system, And that ties into those slots and the decisions to keep fish. I'm not going to say which one is best for you because you paid for your license, and if the system can support it, by all means, do what the license allows you to do. But
my philosophy on that has been usually a 19.5 or a 20-inch fish. I'm not going to. I haven't kept anything over 20 for a long time. But even that 30-incher, if I think I've only caught one actually over 30, but
you got
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Let's book it right now.
Yeah, for sure. I've caught a number in the upper 20s, so and even though they may be near the end, I still have a hard time keeping them because catch and release. I'm a firm believer in catch and release. I've seen a lot of fish get caught again, and somebody else that maybe hasn't caught a 30 might have the chance to catch that again that year or maybe the next year before that fish, dies of natural causes. So that's where I'm at on it. But
I'm the same way. I let a lot of big fish go unless they're hooked really bad. I know they're not going to make it, which I hate to see. But here, and I'll give you an example. So there's a tournament we used to love to fish, Pond Grass in Ohio, and it is a length tournament. I never got it. I never won it, but I took second a couple times. And it took 150 inches to win. It's for 5 fish. But you'd see at that tournament, if it was 80 boats, you'd easily see, I don't know, a couple hundred fish over 30 inches.
Jeez.
So you're saying you had to catch 5 30-inch fish to win? To
win. Wow. So the last one I fished before they stopped having it, I had 151 inches for 5 fish, and I was second.
Oh my gosh!
It wasn't a weight tournament, but the director was curious because I had some tanks, and he weighed, and my top 5 fish were 52 pounds 7 ounces. That's just kind of the class of what you're dealing with. I've had tournaments over here, Detroit River Tournament, Masters Walleye Circuit. We weighed 47, 48 pounds on day one. We're in 9th place.
So that brings up another question I wanted to ask you. As a biologist that's also a tournament angler, how do you feel about weigh-ins? How do you feel about putting a 10-pound walleye, especially if there's no slot limit, putting a 10-pound walleye in your live well, maybe for a couple of hours, bringing it in to weigh it in? What effect is it going to have on that fish? And would, to add on to that, would anglers be interested in some sort of catch and release type tournament versus doing, do people just like their picture up on stage too much? Would they not go for something like that? Or what do you think the future is of tournament angling?
It's interesting. I know CPR with the AIM tournaments are really big out there in Minnesota, Green Bay, North and South Dakota. They tried to bring it to Michigan. I actually won one of the first AIMs here, and it just didn't get the participation. I think guys like to walk across stage with 5 big fish. But I do think there's something to it. And I'm really not a big fan of taking a live well full of fish for a long ride in rough water. I mean, the litter it's out there. Earlier in the year when the water's really cool, like it is now, it's in the 40s or 50s. Those fish have a higher survival rate. But if you're talking about in the summertime, June, July, the water's 70 degrees, sometimes touching 80 degrees, you're catching these big fish. You're going to run 40 miles across Lake Erie in 4-footers and beat the heck out of them and let them go and think, they may look good swimming off. there is a really, 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 really good chance that none of those fish are going to survive, or very few of them are going to survive for a long period of time. And that's well documented in the literature about this stuff. So I'm not a huge fan. I really do think that CPR format tournaments are the future, especially for those who are concerned about the resource, because I don't want to say it's unnecessary, but it's a lot of stress. Green Bay is one. I love Green Bay. I love to go there and fish. And there was a problem with mortality at weigh-in one year at one of the tournaments, just because of water in the bump tanks was too warm, and we stood around with fish, and they just didn't make it. Now, certain places, Ohio's a mandatory kill state, even bass tournaments. If you come in 5 fish, those fish, you have to, they're going to die. They fillet them up and take them to food banks, so there's no waste. But not everyone has a resource where they can just make it mandatory that every fish has to be filleted and given to food banks.
What do you? I saw the MWC got moved out of Red Wing this weekend because of the flooding down there, and got moved over to the Pete and Well flowage stretch of the Wisconsin River. There's a slot limit there, slot and a 1 over. How does that? When you fish in a tournament that's got a slot limit on it, that's got a weigh-in, how does that affect you as an angler? And do you think there could be a time where, if there's going to be a lot of lakes with slots on it, that you would just go to a CPR style tournament, and then you could actually register all those fish in the slot?
I would love to see CPR try.
Yeah.
I avoid slot tournaments like the plague. They are tough. You got to make tough decisions. People don't get it. Like, you'll see a great angler come in with 2 or 3 fish because he played the game of waiting for that big fish to come, and it never came. And he could have came in with 5-16 inches and been in decent shape. So I absolutely hate them. It adds another dimension, to the thought processes that are already pretty tough. But I have been saying it myself, that in those slot type tournaments and in summertime tournaments, I think that going to a CPR format would be very good for the resource. I think it's something that a lot of circuits probably need to take a good hard look at. For that, and another thing it'll do with those CPR formats is it's going to showcase the fishery, right? If I'm fishing a slot tournament and I come in with 2 fish that are 15 inches, it looks like there's nothing going on there. Yeah. But if I come in on my card and I have, 10 fish between 22 and 26 inches, if there's a slot in that range, that fishery is starting to look pretty good. People are seeing those pictures thinking, oh man, there's really some good fish in there. So sure, some people may not want to see people drawn to a fishery like that, but it's still a highlight for that fishery and for tourism in that area. So I think there's a lot of benefits to CPR formats. And when I did fish the AIM, I really enjoyed the format. I really had a great time, and I wish it would come back this way.
How did they handle the CPR so that there was, no way to cheat, basically, for these people?
A lot of photos are taken, so we had to take the photograph. We all got the same bump board. You had to take a photo with the fish on the bump board. Everything was time stamped. And then you had to take a photo holding the fish up, and you always use the same side so that if there were any distinguishing mark on the fish, they'd be able to determine it was the same fish in every picture. So they were very thorough when it came to safeguards against cheating in the AIM, unless someone really wanted to go off the rails. But I'm not going to speculate on that. I'm kind of going to, leave it with most of the guys I fish with are pretty honorable guys. And that thought never crossed my mind, but yeah, good format. Some good safeguards, and I'm a big fan of it.
Well, nobody ever cheats in fishing tournaments, so.
Especially at Lake Erie.
Yeah. Well, and I think, weigh-ins are great, but man, length tournaments, I think there's just less room for error there. You're also talking about, a fish could change its weight depending on what it's eaten, day to day. So a length can determine a bigger fish, so to speak. And, we've been doing this fish donkey style. We've been using the fish donkey amp the last couple of years for our tournament. And it just seems like it's pretty much foolproof, with some of the safeguards they take. So. Yeah,
and I really like it. The only thing I like to see change is some of the length to weight regressions they use. They're not, they're not really accurate, but that's kind of the biologist part of me coming out. Like, there's no way that was a 54-pound bag, but still, fantastic format. I'd love to fish AIM again, and just great for the sport, I think.
Well, what's next for you? What do you got coming up?
Well, we're out of Cleveland for the Masters Walleye Circuit in June. I'll be on Green Bay in July. Then I'm going to go back up to Lake Oahe. We're going to go do some filming up there. Even though I have Lake Erie here and the Erie Huron corridor and the great walleye fishing, I've really fallen in love with the Missouri River, Sakakawea, Oahe, Francis Case. I think it's a really diverse fishery. I really like it. So me and some buds are going to go up there and, make a long weekend out of it, go do some casting, jig the trees, do some stuff. And, I'm going to do a lot of fun fishing this summer, more than I've done in the past couple of years. I need to slow it down a little bit and kind of slow down and smell the roses when it comes to my fishing.
What are you going to be filming for?
Just for fun. We're just going to go up there and just, shoot some content, maybe some stuff for some sponsors.
Gotcha.
Recently picked up by St. Croix, so I'll get some content to them.
Nice.
With their rods but yeah, just more just documenting. I wish I've always been in such a hurry that I have not documented much, So I just want to do some more documentation and more pictures and kind of showing just the fun side of things.
I'll tell you what, we now, because of our jobs here, Dan and I, we bring cameras with and film pretty much. If we're out hunting and fishing, we're filming it. Sometimes we use it. Most of the time we use it for something. Sometimes if it's really a bad day out there, you might not see anything from it, but usually we'll get some social content out of it. But I think one of the best parts about it is, we get to tell stories and show people some cool things, but we get all those pictures for ourselves now all of a sudden, so we can look back and be like, oh yeah, I remember that day out there. And,
and I got to tell you, you're probably a big part of the reason I started doing it. So, after we met last year, I started following you all and started looking at the footage, and I even showed it to my tournament partner, like, man, that's the goal. That's where it's at. Look at this. This is beautiful. I was in Niagara for the Niagara show right after you guys were there.
Oh, really?
And and I watched the footage you had on the river down there. It was gorgeous. And I immediately start looking for AV equipment and start, kind of thinking, hey, man, like I want to get there. It's not so much for followers or whatever, but again, just I'll have it. I can look back on it and just really, we're blessed to do some things that a lot of people don't get a chance to do, and to just kind of let it go by and not really take it all in and enjoy it, I think would be a travesty. So just start to document that stuff, man. And again, you all kind of set a high bar for me to kind of to get there. So I just wanted to let you all know that I'm really a big fan of the stuff you put out.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. That Niagara River, I had no idea what to expect. I'd never been out there before. And it was amazing. It was crazy. And some of the fishing that being able to fish in that river for lake trout and steelhead, and in some cases we were in 6 feet of rushing water, and catch some of the hardest fighting fish that you can. And it might be 10, 15, 20 pounds, hooking into one of those in 6-8 feet of water. That's a pretty fun fight.
Yeah. They were the fun videos to watch. And again, it's just awesome. I watched them and it felt like I was there, and that's the beauty of it, right? If you really love this stuff, I talked about going to Hawaii and going these other places, I want to see it all. And if I can't experience it in person, to see those kind of videos that are just so vivid and colorful and show, the atmosphere and, what's going on around the water and the entire, everything that goes into a trip, it takes me there. Right. And I love it. I have a passion for it. And it does something to me to see that kind of stuff. So, if I can do that for someone else or, my children at some point or something, I'd be extremely happy with that.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate that. And just so you know, once you start going down that rabbit hole of camera gear and and stuff like that, it doesn't end. You always want to get the next best thing. And
my wife's like, I wish you stopped looking at this stuff. Just buy some stuff and go. You're getting on my nerves. So, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. It sounds like you're going to be hopefully in Bemidji with us at the annual Glow Conference this year in September. Dan and I have already been making plans about doing some fishing up there, and we'll be filming, of course, too. So we should plan on getting you in the boat and sharing a boat and doing some fishing and filming this year.
Yes, sir. I'd love to. I'd really appreciate the opportunity.
It'd be a lot of fun. All right, Ali Shakur, great stuff again. Let's do this again in the future, and we'll see you this fall for sure. And thanks for the time today on the show.
Sporting Journal Radio is a division of Macaba LLC. If you've got a question, comment, or story idea for us, send us an email. Go to sportingjournalradio.com. While you're there, you can learn how to advertise on the show and visit our store for hats, hoodies, coffee mugs, and more. Go to sportingjournalradio.com.